Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy Heroes. We're back with a talk video and a surprise marquee is what we have to cover. This was a curveball. So we're going to break down that kit analysis. Synergies and developer insights. Insights are thin, but there's a lot to cover with synergies. Content update also included the first order TIE pilots Omicron. And we'll wrap up with some free-to-play gearing. A new droid to cover, and maybe this means we finally get a droid team that works, that has long been teased, but has never really fallen into place. With the basic calculated odds, what we're looking at here is physical damage to the target. If target is target locked, guaranteed critical hit if they're able to be critically hit. If all allies are droids and the attack critically hits, the next ally to take a turn gains advantage. So what this sounds like is we need to be a lot more aware of who is immune to critical hits. That's not something I usually pay attention to, and I usually don't pay attention to crit immunity buffs, so maybe this will be a reason to start. Second special, Sabacc Shuffle. This is a Zeta, has a cooldown of 4. This character is a pretty fast character, same base speed as Hermit Yoda at 180. So what that is going to let us know is this ability is going to be pretty important. AoE, physical damage 3 times, inflict, defense down. If all allies are non-separatist droids, just assume that for the rest of the kit, no separatist droids. 60% chance to inflict target lock and remove 10% turn meter for each instance of damage, max of 30%. Allies are going to gain 10% offense stacking until the end of the counter. All allies will also gain 5% turn meter for each debuff inflicted by this ability. So it sounds very much like we're going to want to have 50R-T as fast as possible, but probably not the first fastest character. And you're going to want to use this ability first on this character and use this ability as much as possible. I do think, though, we are probably going to want T3M4 a little bit faster to dispel any buffs before you use this ability to guarantee that debuffs are being inflicted. Because if all the debuffs are landing, which is the target lock and the defense down, that means potentially up to 50% turn meter gained by this ability if it all lands. Second special, this one is a whole lot less interesting. Tactical advantage, another cooldown of 4. What we are looking at here, dispel debuffs on the weakest ally. They're going to gain advantage, health steal, speed up. If the ally was a non-separatist droid and any debuffs were dispelled, they're going to gain offense up and tenacity up and inflict target lock and speed down on the weakest enemy. This is kind of like a blast from the past. It's a weird ability. It's definitely more conditional. It's just a little underwhelming because it's kind of old school in the game. This feels like an ability from several years ago. So it gives buffs, but they're not really significant ones that you really care that much about, except for advantage, but there's not as much advantage synergy here. Well, there's enough crit synergy on the basic where I guess, but it's an ability I'm probably holding off on unless they're control debuffs. So if they're debuffs like stun, shock, healing immunity, then I'm going to use the ability. But if it's just like vulnerable, damage over time, speed down, tenacity down, common buffs, whatever, I'm not going to be dispelling. This is something I'm going to wait on, especially within the context of the 4-turn cooldown. With the leadership, it looks like we finally have that droid leader. It's not amazing, it could be supplanted in the future, but it is better than anything else we've got going. So droid allies, plus 35% defense, plus 35 speed, and gain spare parts, which is a new revive mechanic. At the start of the battle, if all allies are droids, 50R-T gains 30% max health and 40 speed spare parts. That is going to give 30% crit chance and offense. When the character is defeated, they are revived with 100% health, gain foresight, and protection up 50% for 2 turns, and then spare parts will be dispelled from all the allies, which means they will be losing that 30% crit chance and 30% offense. So there is incentive to have characters live as long as possible so that you maintain those buffs. It's a pretty decent leadership. We'll get to the Omicron in a second. It definitely replaces, I guess HK-47 is the best one going right now. That used to be better before the nerf, but yeah, that's the only one I've really tried to get working. But because we have the added defense and the added speed, this starts falling into place, but it does rely a little bit on other droid characters for some other stat gain, which is pretty clear because added defense and added speed is nice, but it's not the same as the other stat sharing abilities we've seen on other characters. The revive mechanic of the spare parts ability is nice. It's not what I care the most about. I care about the stat boost a lot more. The revive mechanic is going to work very nicely with L3 in particular, R2 as well, and if you lose any character to AoE, but it's something where I don't think you're going to want characters too weak around and trigger the spare parts revive too soon, because then you're losing that stat boost, which I think is a little bit more helpful. The Omicron portion, I'm not going to be doing this Omicron, but I can see scenarios in which it would be useful. The bigger problem is putting a bunch of relics on the rest of this squad to make it make sense and worthwhile. It's fine if you already have relics on a bunch of droids, but I'm not going out of my way to beef up squads to make this Omicron more useful. So it will be work in the sense of if you have a bad start, it can turn the tide of that battle if you're able to take out the weakest enemy. But you need to make sure your droids can target that weakest enemy. If you're stuck behind a taunt, you might not be able to take out the character you need to revive all the droids, at which case then the Omicron is not doing a lot of help. Plus you need to have droids that do a bunch of damage, and we still don't have those major attackers in the droids. You're really counting on the stat boosts in order to do the damage. And unless we see changes on Imperial Probe Droid where massive damage can start hurting relics again, or not again, never had relics negated that ability, or we get new droids that are able to serve more as an attacker, then I think this Omicron is way too conditional to be useful. The unique ability VIP treatment at the start. Weakest other ally gains VIP. Whenever the VIP is damaged, they're going to gain stealth. 50R-T will recover health and protection. Whenever 50R-T is damaged, the VIP will recover health and protection equal to 5% of 50R-T's max heal and protection, and they gain offense up. 50R-T then gains defense up and 50% protection up, stacking max up to 250%. That's the really nice portion here of the VIP ability. If all allies are droids, 50R-T and VIP are immune to turn meter reduction. That is pretty huge, and might mean that the droids could start countering the teams that rely a lot on turn meter reduction. That type of immunity is far more rare within existing character kits. So it's very interesting, unique. Also, the stacking protection up, that will just make the team beefier, and I like how it can be triggered through AoEs, and then there's that nice passive heal on both characters. So with that, I think this is a good addition. I'm very interested to see if we can start piecemealing a droid team together. You saw me several months ago trying to make it happen with T3M4, Quill, IG-11, L3, and I forget who the fifth I was using in that scenario. But there was potentiality within the droid teams that I and others were always trying to find, and it never really happened. So now there is at least another component that could finally unlock it, but I don't think we're there yet. I think CG has bigger long-term plans, and there's probably more characters forthcoming to make droids better. Kenobi, maybe, because we know from the trailers there are droids that CG will definitely make characters with, but they're probably going to be more Kenobi series related than I think having synergies with the rest of the game. But we'll talk more about those synergies right now. Unlike with a lot of recent character releases, 50R-T is a nice open-ended character that just works with a pretty large faction, which means there's a lot to speculate on. T3M4 is a no-brainer. You'll need the combat logic upgrade. That's always been a good Zeta, but other than the General Grievous nuke team, never really found a home. L3 is going to make a lot of sense, but I don't know if I want to take L3 away from a dash team. L3 has been pretty important to protect Vandor. IG-11 could be nice, but IG-11 really needs to have Quill around. They have good synergies there. They have their own stats sharing. And the dispelling that he does may actually make using 50R-T's second special more annoying, because it'll be removing debuffs on its own, preventing you from using the special and cleansing that way. There's an argument for R2 on any droid team. He doesn't have a home anymore. R2 makes a lot of sense. Chupio is awesome, but this team would have to be pretty amazing in order to warrant taking Chupio away from CLS. But what CG pretty clearly leaves out of this is the target lock synergies, and those target lock synergies are pretty notable. I was going to say important, but they're not important. The target lock Zetas that exist on IG-88, and in a moment we'll talk about IPDs, they've always been interesting for the potential synergies. No character has ever been able to exploit them. The Zeta on adaptive aim algorithm, target locked enemies can't recover health or protection. So that is going to be negating a lot of the survivability mechanics. Rapid fire is going to be spreading target lock with an AoE attack. Combine that with Imperial Probe Droid. He has a Zeta on Imperial Logistics. And what that does is target locked enemies can't gain buffs. So that will be negating a lot of the bonuses that buffs will be contributing, and also with the detect ability, Imperial Probe Droid can be adding further target locks on the field and remove some turn meter. So that's 3 characters with target lock mechanics, 2 of them with some turn meter mechanics, survivability is being negated, and a effective buff immunity is being added. T3M4 has always needed to be on a droid team, and because that's with combat logic upgrade. What this Zeta does is it adds potency, it adds crit chance, and it also gains plus 8% crit damage for each debuff on the enemy team. He also lands a bunch of debuffs with his Carbonite Projector ability. So the first turn you're going to be landing Carbonite Projector. You probably want T3M4 to go first if you can swing it, then have 50R-T come in right after with the first special, spread the target locks, inflict defense down, and hopefully do a bunch of damage. That extra crit chance is what made the nuke team work so well. There does seem to be a need for a bigger attacker on this team, though. That is what's missing and why I don't think there's a current fifth. There's options for a fifth right now, but they're not quite there. The defense penetration here, you need gear 12 for this. This Zeta shouldn't be applied on a gear 11 character, but I did. But it's defense penetration, which will be helping increase the damage if you have a higher T3M4. And it's adding T3M4's defense penetration to the rest of the characters. And the last one to really highlight is R2, because of R2's Zetas that add the stat sharing. I think it's combat analysis. No, that's the crit one. It is number crunch. So number crunch, droid allies will gain 10% of R2's max protection, offense, health, and potency. So that's more debuffs landing, it's more survivability, it's more offense on top of the offense that is being gained through that spare parts. There is a lot of compounding abilities that are adding up to some mechanics here that make this team potentially function. I'm just not convinced it's all the way there, but I will be interested to test a lot of that out. In the rest of the developer insights, there's not too much to talk about here. There's a lot of talking about their inspiration for the character, because this character is a version of a character from the Star Wars The Old Republic game, but it's not a true representation of what that character is. They're saying this is a droid that has been reformatted for a different use, kind of like how IG-11 was changed from the assassin droid capabilities into a caretaker droid abilities. This goes from whatever purpose it had into a sabacc droid, which is sure. But I'm excited to see droids be used. So I don't care too much of how it came to be. I just hope Lucasfilm finds more ways to make this character have more import within the lore. We don't usually get to do this, but since 50R-T is live in game, we can take a look at the gearing requirements. And from gear 7 to 11, 50R-T is not all that bad, and Gear 11 is what I like to highlight on this channel because it's one of my big operating philosophies where it allows for rapid roster development, and that's where I like to start doing my testing to see if I can use those in my grand arenas where I play in Kyber 2. So she's not a bad character. 1 Carbani, 3 stun cuffs, 4 holo projectors. Really the only bad part is the 3 of each Cairo tech piece. Not that bad. And since we're here, we may as well talk about it. Darth Malgus, because it's on screen right now. Considering who Darth Malgus is and how desirable of a character he is, that is not a bad character to gear. 6 Carbantes is annoying, it's a lot, but 3 stun guns, no stun cuffs. only 3 Chirotechs of each Chirotech. That's way better than the Inquisitors. That's better than the Bad Batch. For a high-end Conquest character, that's easy. That, other than the work we have to do to get him, that is a very nice hill to climb. Content update. The 7th sister is now farmable. That's pretty nice. I've been waiting on that because I'm already done with the 2nd sister and I'm on the final star of the 9th sister. So the 7th sister is coming at a good time. I'll be hitting that node 3 times a day, so doing the 25 and 50 crystal refreshes. Echo is now accelerated. Omega is now the final one, so you should be farming the Bad Batch. If you're not, those characters are very good, very much worth it. And the Outrider, I am so tempted to get a 5th star on the Outrider. I didn't like using a 4-star Outrider. It was not survivable enough on the front lines, and I don't like it as a reinforcement. The Conquest fixes, nice surprise, was not expecting it. I did do a bunch of extra 100 crystal refreshes lately to make sure I get Malgus because of the issues with the Dread Feet, but now it turns out I didn't need to do that and I could have saved those crystal refreshes. That is, usually they haven't done this. Usually they have waited to implement the Conquest fixes until after. I hope you were able to exploit the Scion and Nihilus feat that people were doing to cheese that one quickly. We'll have to find other solutions or just do more work and effort to get that feat on subsequent conquests. But hopefully this type of response CG can find ways to implement more in the future. Really what we need to talk about here though is the First Order TIE pilot is getting an Omicron, and it's not a bad Omicron. If you have SLKR, you probably should consider putting this Omicron on. If you don't have SLKR, I would probably not do the Omicron. It's the type of thing that you'll get more use out of if they're relict, and unless you're going for SLKR, that's not a diversion that I think is worthwhile. But what this will be doing in Grand Arena, all allies gain 50% max health. Whenever an ally has advantage, they gain crit damage and 100 speed. At the start of the round, if an ally doesn't have advantage, they gain tenacity. Whenever an ally loses advantage, they recover health and protection. Whenever First Order TIE pilot gains bonus turn meter, they gain advantage if they didn't already have it. And whenever First Order TIE pilot gains foresight, all allies gain foresight. That's really nice stuff. It's going to make those Phasma teams much more annoying, and I think it means I'm probably going to be increasing the relic levels on Nest that I was meaning to do anyway. But it's in that range of kind of like Zam, where my position on Zam is that Omicron makes a strong team stronger. What this one is doing is making a weak team into a more functional team, because I've long said those Phasma teams should not be set on defense at all. If you put this Omicron on, it's more of an argument. It's no longer a waste. It's going to shrink the available pools, but I don't think it's not going to stop Nest. The Nest is still going to clear this. It's just you might need a better Nest to do it, because with unfortunate timing and protection being down, the right character does the damage, Nest could be taken out. So it's just more incentive for me to increase relic levels on that particular character. And now we will wrap up as we do with the free-to-play gearing of my roster. This is the gearing I did prior to 3v3 on May 8th. So the big things here are the Inquisitors, promoting them on all of the farming that I've been doing. So that is Second Sister being finished. Most of that is for the TIE Interceptor. Some of that is also for Conquest. I bring her up to Gear 11. That is one of the things I'll be looking at in Conquest, is now I'm able to max out the ability here on the TIE Interceptor. And the TIE Interceptor, I was already getting holds with a Gear 10 Second Sister against Negotiators. That happened twice last round in Grand Arena. So if that was already happening, I'm very much looking forward to my new TIE Interceptor. Iden Verso, done with the farm. Ninth Sister promoting up to the 6-star. I put on one of the Kairos here, because she's not all that tanky at Gear 8. Gear 8 was pretty useless. I don't have the Kairos to take her up further, at least the way that I budget them out. I wanted to get 5th Brother up to Gear 10. I'm looking at a few of these pieces to decide if I wanted to take him up to 11 or not. He's not that bad of a character to gear. 9th Sister is the egregious one. 8th Brother is the easiest of the Inquisitors. I take 8th Brother up to Gear 11. But I ultimately don't take 5th Brother up any further, but I do put the Zeta on. That's a pretty good Zeta. All of them have their Zetas now except for 8th Brother. That Zeta I didn't care as much about. I'll eventually get around to it. Jahani is for Star Killer, and looking at her gear, it's at this stage in the game, it's worth me doing. And I also geared her up for Conquest to make those Old Republic battles just a tiny bit easier. Now we go to ships. I've got the TIE Echelon to add a star to. Both the MG100 and Echelon are coming along pretty nicely, pretty close on their stars. Definitely upgrade both reinforcement abilities on all First Order ships. That's the whole deal with the finalizer. I'm going to look at a few things. Yeah, the last thing I do here is I just add a couple relic levels to Star Killer. I'm still recovering on my relic abilities or relic resources, so I don't want to use too much too quick until I make some larger decisions on my roster of what I want to do next. Yeah, I mull it over a second, but that's ultimately where I end up. Not that much, relatively speaking, but a lot of work on the Inquisitors. It's something where I'm going to have them all at Gear 11 prior to the Legendary event, but they won't be starred up. But after I have the farming done, I might consider it. We'll see what happens by the end of June. That's still a lot of time, and even more time before I have them completely farmed. But I feel like at that point I'm so close, I may as well just get the Grand Inquisitor. I'll probably get the Grand Inquisitor during the second run of that event. We'll wrap it up there. Kenobi trailer was great. Loved seeing the Inquisitors. I've been watching the Rebels series for the Inquisitor and Kenobi tie-ins. Love seeing the Purge Troopers in that trailer. Still surprised that we didn't get Purge Troopers in the game, because that was one of the bets that I was making during my quarterly speculation video. But maybe CG knew that they had larger plans to do it with Kenobi and tying into Kenobi in the long run. Maybe, maybe not. But that is where we will call it. Thank you for watching. Be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.